Strength is often hidden in plain sight. Look at the person sitting next to you on the bus, or the colleague in the meeting who remains unshaken by chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This ancient truth fuels a quiet revolution today. Modern Stoics are everyday people channeling this ancient strength to navigate a world of relentless pressure and digital distraction. They are building an unshakable core of calm and purpose, not in a remote temple, but in the midst of their ordinary lives. By the end of this, you will understand the specific mental practices that create this profound resilience, turning daily stress into a source of power. We will uncover how a simple pause before reacting can disarm conflict, and how contemplating worst-case scenarios can actually bring peace. What does genuine strength look like to you in your own life? At the heart of Stoic resilience is the idea of an inner fortress. This is the unshakable core of your being, a place of calm judgment that remains untouched by the storms of the outside world. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius described it beautifully when he wrote that your soul should become a citadel, for a person can retreat there and find instant peace. He was not talking about a physical place, but a mental one you build brick by brick through practice. It is the part of you that observes a stressful email, a critical comment, or a sudden change of plans without being immediately swept away by panic or anger. In our modern world, this concept is more vital than ever. We are constantly bombarded by information, opinions, and social pressures that demand an immediate emotional reaction. The inner citadel is your defense against this constant siege. It is the pause between the trigger and your response, the space where you reclaim your power to choose. Consider a project manager whose main client suddenly cancels a major contract. Panic would be a normal reaction, but instead of spiraling into fear, she retreats to her inner citadel. Her internal dialogue is not one of blame or catastrophe, but of reason. She assesses what she can control, focuses on the next actionable step, and communicates calmly with her team. Her composure is not a lack of feeling, but a result of this disciplined inner practice. She has fortified her mind against the external chaos. So where in your own life could you begin to build stronger walls? Is there an area where the opinions of others or the pressure of circumstances easily shake your peace? Identify that one area. That is the ground on which you can start constructing your own unshakable citadel today. How often do we suffer more in imagination than in reality? The anxiety we feel about a looming deadline or a difficult conversation is frequently a story we have written ourselves, layered with fears of what might go wrong. This is where the ancient Stoic practice of cognitive detachment becomes a modern superpower. It is the disciplined art of separating the raw, unfiltered event from the judgment we instantly place upon it. This is not about becoming emotionally cold or indifferent. It is about creating a small space between what happens and your interpretation of it, allowing you to see the situation with clearer eyes and a calmer mind. The Stoic teacher Epictetus captured this perfectly when he said that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The event itself is neutral. It is the narrative we build around it that causes our pain. Think of receiving a terse email from your boss that simply says, "We need to talk." The bare fact is a request for communication, yet our mind immediately rushes in, painting a catastrophic picture of disapproval and job insecurity. This added story, this judgment, is the source of the churning stomach and the frantic worry. Cognitive detachment asks you to pause that narrative engine, It invites you to look at the email again, not as a personal attack, but as a piece of data. Perhaps your boss is simply busy, or the matter is urgent but not negative. By stripping away the judgment, you drain the situation of its imagined terror, replacing anxiety with a simple question: what are the actual facts here? This practice dramatically reduces mental noise, clearing the way for better, more rational decisions. Consider someone who receives critical feedback on a project. Their initial, untrained reaction might be one of defensiveness and hurt, a feeling of personal failure. But by applying cognitive detachment, they can learn to see the feedback not as a verdict on their worth, but as a collection of observations about the work itself. They can sift through the comments, extract the useful data, and decide on a course of action without the emotional spiral. The criticism has not vanished, but its power to derail their entire day has been neutralized. Can you recall a recent event that upset you? Take a moment and examine it. What were the pure, objective facts of the situation, stripped of all your interpretations? What story did you tell yourself about what those facts meant? That story, that added judgment, is where your suffering truly lived. Recognizing this is the first step toward reclaiming your peace. Stoicism teaches a powerful pause between stimulus and response. This is the discipline of assent, the practice of withholding your immediate agreement with every thought or impression that flashes through your mind. Before you react with anger to a comment or with panic to a news alert, this discipline asks you to insert a moment of conscious evaluation. It is a mental checkpoint, a brief but crucial hesitation where you ask two simple questions. Is this initial impression an accurate reflection of reality? And is accepting this impression beneficial for my character and my goals? We live in an age of digital impulsivity, where a frustrated thought can become a public tweet in seconds, and a moment of irritation can be cemented into a harsh email with one click. The discipline of assent is the antidote to this reactive cycle. The Stoic teacher Epictetus gave clear instructions on this, stating that we should not be carried away by the vividness of an impression, but say to it, "Wait for me a little while, impression. Let me see who you are and what you represent." You are not your first thought. You are the gatekeeper who decides whether to let that thought in. Consider a manager who receives an email from a team member that seems dismissive of his ideas. His initial impression is one of disrespect, and the immediate impulse is to fire back a sharp reply to assert his authority. But instead of clicking send, he practices the pause. He walks away from his desk for 5 minutes. In that space, he examines the impression. Is it true that the team member intended disrespect? Perhaps they are simply stressed and typing quickly. Is reacting with anger beneficial? It might only damage a working relationship and create more conflict. By withholding his immediate assent to the initial impression of disrespect, he avoids escalating the situation. He returns to his desk and composes a calm, clarifying message instead. This single pause prevented a day of tension and preserved team harmony. The next time you feel that hot surge of a negative impulse, whether it is the urge to snap at a loved one or to despair over a work setback, try this. Create that space. Even 3 deep breaths can be enough. In that pause, gently ask your impression, is this truly accurate? Your power does not lie in never having the initial reaction. It lies in your ability to choose not to be ruled by it. What if every obstacle was not a barrier but the path itself? This is the radical invitation of Apathy, a love of one's fate. It is the decision to embrace everything that life brings, not with passive resignation, but with active, purposeful acceptance. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Imagine possessing that kind of inner fire. one that transforms every setback, every piece of bad news, every personal loss into fuel for your own growth. This is not about pretending that difficulties are pleasant. It is about recognizing that they are necessary. They are the very raw materials required to build resilience, wisdom, and depth of character. A modern example of this shines through in the story of someone facing an unexpected job loss. The initial shock and fear are real, but instead of spiraling into a story of failure and victimhood, they practice Apathy. They begin to reframe the event. They see it not as a door slamming shut, but as a necessary push onto a new, more authentic path they were too comfortable to seek on their own. This forced change becomes an opportunity to reassess their true skills and passions, leading them to a career that is far more aligned with their core values. The job loss did not change, but their relationship to it transformed everything. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic thought, later captured this spirit perfectly with his maxim, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Apathy, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." This is the ultimate stance of empowerment. It is the realization that fighting against the unchangeable facts of your past or present is a draining battle you can never win. Loving your fate, however, turns you into an ally of reality itself. Your energy is no longer wasted on resistance, but is channeled into creative response and growth. So look at one current difficulty in your own life. It might be a strained relationship, a financial pressure, or a health concern. For a moment, set aside the frustration and ask a different question. How could this specific challenge right now be serving your development? What strength is it asking you to cultivate? What deeper truth is it revealing? The obstacle is not in your way, it is the way. From the edge of the solar system, your entire world is a single, pale blue dot. All of your anxieties, your ambitions, and your daily struggles are contained within that faint speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. This is the essence of the view from above, a Stoic meditation that shrinks our self-importance down to its true, humbling scale. The practice involves mentally zooming out from your immediate situation to see your life within the grand theater of the cosmos and the vast river of time. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this perspective in his private writings, reminding himself to frequently contemplate the swiftness with which all things vanish. Our bodies, our memories, the empires we build, all are soon buried by the tides of time. He saw the bustling markets and the great halls of power as nothing more than anthills, full of frantic activity that would soon be forgotten. This is not meant to make life feel meaningless, but to free you from the tyranny of the trivial. That harsh comment from a coworker, the frustration of a delayed train, the gnawing worry about your social media presence, these things lose their crushing weight when viewed from this cosmic vantage point. They become what they truly are, momentary flickers in a vast and ancient universe. A project manager, drowning in the stress of a looming deadline and conflicting demands, can practice this. She closes her eyes for just 60 seconds. In her mind's eye, she pulls her perspective up out of the office building above the city until the whole continent is visible, then the planet, a beautiful marble swirling in the blackness of space. From there, her project deadline feels different. It is still important, but the panic is gone, replaced by a quiet, focused clarity. The stakes are real, but they are human-sized, not world-ending. The next time you find yourself simmering with road rage in standstill traffic, or feeling your patience thin in a slow-moving line, try this shift. Look at the sky. Remember the age of the stars you are seeing. Feel the immense stretch of time that came before you and will flow long after. Your current inconvenience is a single grain of sand on an endless beach. This perspective does not ask you to abandon your responsibilities, but to fulfill them with a lighter heart and a calmer mind, knowing that in the grand scheme of the cosmos, your peace is your most significant contribution. Stoics find peace by regularly contemplating worst-case scenarios. This ancient practice, known as premeditatio malorum, is the deliberate rehearsal of potential loss or difficulty. At first glance, this seems like a recipe for anxiety, a dark obsession with everything that could go wrong, but the Stoic purpose is the exact opposite. It is a tool to disarm fear and cultivate a profound appreciation for the present moment. By willingly visiting the places we most dread in our minds, we discover that they are survivable. We realize that our capacity to endure is far greater than our anxiety would have us believe. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a master of this. He advised his followers to periodically rehearse poverty, exile, and even the loss of loved ones. He wrote that he would practice living on a little bread and water, not as a punishment, but to prove to himself that a person can endure the very things he fears. This practice was not born from a grim view of life, but from a deep desire to never be taken by surprise and to fully cherish what he had while he had it. In our modern world, we can apply this to the anxieties that haunt us: the fear of a sudden job loss, a serious health diagnosis, or the end of a cherished relationship. Premeditatio malorum does not invite you to dwell on the emotional pain of these events, but to calmly walk through the practical steps of what you would do next. You mentally strip the scenario of its terrifying power and see it as a series of manageable problems to be solved. Imagine someone who deeply values their financial security. Instead of letting a vague fear of market downturns create a background hum of stress, they set aside a few minutes to truly consider it. What if my investments lost half their value? They would not stop at the initial shock. They would mentally walk through the steps. They would cut non-essential spending, perhaps look for new income streams, and rely on their resourcefulness. They emerge from this mental exercise not with fear, but with a renewed gratitude for the security they currently possess and a clearer plan to protect it. Or consider preparing for a difficult conversation with a family member. Before the talk, you mentally rehearse the worst possible outcome, a complete breakdown in communication. By accepting even that painful possibility, you remove its power to throw you off balance during the actual discussion. You enter the room not with brittle hope, but with a grounded calm, ready to engage from a place of strength rather than fear. Take a moment now and think of something you value immensely, perhaps your health, your home, or a key relationship. Acknowledge its temporary nature. This is not to create sadness, but to sharpen the beauty of its presence in your life right now. This simple act of conscious gratitude, born from understanding impermanence, is a quiet form of strength that nothing can easily take from you. The single most powerful Stoic tool is understanding what you can and cannot control. This principle, known as the Dichotomy of Control, is the bedrock of Stoic practice. The ancient teacher Epictetus laid it out with stunning clarity in the very first sentence of his handbook. He said that some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Our own judgments, our impulses, our desires, and our actions are within our power. Everything else, from our reputation and our wealth to the actions of other people and the weather, is not. This is not a vague philosophical suggestion. It is a precise map for where to direct your energy. The profound liberation in this idea comes from ceasing to fight battles you are guaranteed to lose. You cannot control the stock market, a rude comment from a stranger, or the red light that makes you late, but you have absolute authority over your response to each of these events. Investing your mental and emotional energy in the sphere of your own choices builds strength. Wasting it on things outside your command only leads to exhaustion and frustration. Think of the last time you were stuck in traffic, your knuckles white on the steering wheel. The traffic jam itself is entirely outside your control. Your rage, however, is a choice. A modern Stoic in that same car would recognize the futility of the internal storm. They would shift their focus to what they can control. They might choose to listen to an enlightening podcast, use the time to plan their day, or simply practice being present and patient. The external circumstance is identical, but the internal experience is transformed from one of suffering to one of productive calm. This practice applies everywhere. You cannot control a negative performance review, but you can control how you receive the feedback and what you choose to learn from it. You cannot control a friend's opinion of you, but you can control whether you act with integrity. The world will constantly present you with challenges, but this simple filter allows you to meet them with your power intact, not squandered on things you were never meant to command. Take a moment and think back on 3 things that upset you this past week. Write them down if you can. Now, beside each one, honestly ask yourself, was this within my control? You will likely find that your distress was centered almost entirely on things in that second column. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward redirecting your energy to the one place where it can truly make a difference, the citadel of your own mind. How would you live today if you knew it was your last? This question is the heart of Memento Mori, the Stoic practice of remembering your own mortality. Far from being a dark fixation, this remembrance is a powerful tool to sharpen your focus and infuse your days with purpose. The Stoics saw the awareness of death not as a morbid end, but as the very spark that ignites a life well lived. It cuts through the noise of trivial concerns and forces you to confront what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius offered a simple, direct instruction to himself, writing that you could leave life right now. Let that decide what you do and say and think. He was not suggesting a life of frantic bucket list checking, but one of consistent virtue and meaningful action, free from the procrastination that so easily steals our time. In our modern age, this practice is an antidote to the endless scroll. How many hours are lost to digital distractions, to worrying about opinions that hold no real weight, or to putting off the conversations and projects that align with our deepest values? Memento Mori pulls you back to the present. It asks you to consider the finite number of days you have and to spend them on what is essential. Imagine someone who has been avoiding a difficult conversation with a parent, letting a quiet distance grow over months. The thought of mortality enters their mind not as a fear, but as a clarifier. They realize that the potential discomfort of the talk is nothing compared to the regret of unresolved words. They pick up the phone and dial, their action fueled by the clarity that time is a non-renewable resource. Or consider the person who has always dreamed of writing a novel, but keeps waiting for the perfect, stress-free moment that never arrives. By holding the concept of Memento Mori, they understand that someday is not a day on the calendar. They commit to writing 1 page each evening, not out of fear, but out of a profound respect for the life they have been given. Their project moves from a vague fantasy to a daily practice, each page a testament to their chosen purpose. So take a moment and look at your own day. What one thing would you do differently right now if you fully embraced the truth that your time is limited? Would you finally send that email to launch the side project? Would you put your phone away and be fully present with your family? The reminder of death is not a call to despair, but an invitation to live with such intention that when your final moment does come, you can look back on a life of few regrets, a life where you chose what was meaningful over what was merely convenient. Stoics strive with all their might but hold the results lightly. This is the essence of the reserve clause, a practice of detached commitment that transforms how we pursue our goals. You pour your absolute best effort into an endeavor, yet you inwardly add a silent clause, fate permitting. Your ambition is not diminished, but your peace is no longer held hostage by the outcome, which is never entirely within your control. This ancient idea finds a powerful voice in the writings of Seneca, who advised that the wise person loves their plans and their labor, but always with the reservation if nothing prevents. This is not a lack of passion, but a profound understanding of how the world works. It is the difference between being a dedicated player in the game of life and a desperate gambler who has bet everything on a single roll of the dice. In our modern lives, we see this everywhere. Think of the person who spends months preparing for a job interview, researching the company, and practicing their answers. They perform brilliantly, leaving the room knowing they gave their absolute best. Yet when the rejection email arrives a week later, they are not shattered. Why? Because they had applied the reserve clause. Their sense of worth was anchored in the quality of their preparation and their courageous effort, not in the hiring manager's final decision, which could have been influenced by 100 factors they could not see. They controlled their actions, but they held the result lightly. Or consider an artist who works for a year on a novel, dedicating early mornings and late nights to crafting the perfect story. They send their manuscript to publishers, a process filled with uncertainty. The Stoic artist, practicing detached commitment, finds fulfillment in the creative act itself, in the discipline of writing and the integrity of their work. Whether the book becomes a bestseller or gathers rejection slips, the core value of the endeavor remains untouched. The effort was theirs to give, the outcome belongs to fortune. This mindset is the ultimate antidote to the burnout and frustration that plague so many high achievers. It allows you to work with intense focus and energy, yet rest in a state of grace when external results do not align with your hopes. You can look at any goal you are currently pursuing, whether it is a fitness target, a financial milestone, or mending a relationship. Are you clinging too tightly to a specific result? How would your approach change if you committed fully to your actions today, while silently accepting that the final form of success may look different than you planned? Your effort is your masterpiece, the outcome is merely its frame. Modern Stoics occasionally choose discomfort to remember they are stronger than their circumstances. This might sound counterintuitive in a world dedicated to eliminating every possible inconvenience. Yet this deliberate practice, known as voluntary discomfort, is a powerful method for forging resilience. It is the conscious decision to step away from a comfort, not as a punishment, but as a training exercise for the soul. You are proving to yourself that your well-being does not depend on perfect external conditions. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus argued vigorously for this, stating that practicing hardship is necessary to be able to endure hardship. He saw it as a form of vaccination for the spirit, a small, controlled dose of difficulty that builds antibodies against the larger shocks life will inevitably deliver. This is not about glorifying suffering or adopting a life of permanent austerity. It is about inoculating yourself against the fear of lack and breaking the subtle tyranny that comfort can hold over your happiness. In an age of constant softness, where temperature is always controlled and gratification is instantly available, we can become psychologically fragile. The mere thought of being cold, hungry, or slightly inconvenienced can trigger disproportionate anxiety. Voluntary discomfort shatters this illusion of fragility. It is a direct, experiential reminder of your own innate toughness. Consider the simple act of taking a cold shower. For that brief minute under the cold water, every instinct screams to escape. But by choosing to stay, you are not just enduring the cold, You are training your mind to observe discomfort without being commanded by it. You emerge not just awake, but empowered, carrying the knowledge that you can handle far more than you thought. Or take the practice of skipping a single meal, not for dieting, but for mental clarity. The initial hunger pangs arise, and with them, the impulse to immediately satisfy the craving. By pausing and simply observing the sensation without reacting, you break a chain of automatic behavior. You discover that the feeling is temporary and survivable, and you gain a renewed, visceral appreciation for the food you usually take for granted. Even choosing to walk instead of driving on a cold day serves this purpose. The bite of the wind on your face becomes a teacher, reminding you of your physicality and your capacity to move through the world without a protective shell. So where could you begin? Identify one small, safe comfort that currently feels like a non-negotiable part of your day. Is it that morning coffee, the constant background noise of a podcast, or the warmth of your heated car seat? What would it feel like to voluntarily give it up for just 24 hours? Not to deprive yourself, but to discover the strength that lies just beneath the surface of your routine. Long before mindfulness became a modern trend, Stoics were practicing a vigilant form of present-moment awareness called prasarge. This is the discipline of maintaining constant attention to the inner workings of your own mind, a guardian standing watch at the gates of your perception. It is the practice of catching a negative impression or a faulty judgment the very moment it arises, before it can take root and dictate your actions. The Stoic teacher Epictetus defined this as our most critical task, stating that the first step in philosophy is to watch over our thoughts, for they are the source of everything else. This is not a passive observation, but an active stewardship of your inner world. It is the direct antidote to living on autopilot, where we react to life's triggers with ingrained habits of anger, envy, or anxiety without ever realizing we have a choice. Imagine you are in a long meeting and a colleague repeatedly dismisses your suggestions. The automatic, unconscious reaction is a slow simmer of irritation, a story building in your mind about their disrespect, leading you to either withdraw sullenly or lash out with a sharp remark. Stoic mindfulness interrupts this entire chain. You notice the initial flash of heat, the tightening in your chest. You catch the judgment, he is being dismissive, and you hold it up for examination before you assent to it. In that space of conscious awareness, you reclaim your power. You can choose to see his behavior not as a personal attack, but as a sign of his own preoccupation or stress. You can then respond with a clarifying question instead of a defensive retort, steering the interaction toward collaboration rather than conflict. This vigilant attention turns everyday life into a training ground. The frustration in a traffic jam, the impatience while waiting in line, the sting of an offhand comment, each becomes an opportunity to practice prasarge. To build this muscle, set a simple reminder on your phone to chime 3 times throughout your day. When it sounds, pause for just 10 seconds and ask yourself a single question. What judgments are currently coloring my perception of this moment? This small, repeated act of checking in can begin to lift the veil of automatic reaction, revealing the profound freedom you always possessed to choose your response. We all have heroes, but Stoics choose theirs with deliberate care for their character. In a world that often celebrates fame and wealth above all else, this ancient practice directs our admiration toward the one thing we can truly cultivate, our own virtue. The Stoics called this the practice of emulating the sage, using the example of a wise and morally excellent person, whether historical or imagined, as a living guide for our own choices. This is not about blind imitation, but about creating a mental model of strength and integrity to consult in moments of uncertainty. When you face a complex moral dilemma or a surge of difficult emotion, you can pause and ask a simple, powerful question. How would my chosen sage navigate this situation? Their imagined response becomes a practical template, cutting through the noise of your own immediate impulses and pointing toward a higher path. Seneca's letters are filled with this sentiment. He openly reflected on the profound guidance he received from his teacher, Attalus, and his friend, Serenus, writing that living with such virtuous companions was like having a guardian against the corruption of the crowd. He was not seeking to copy them exactly, but to let their example inspire his own unique expression of wisdom and courage. Imagine a modern professional who discovers a colleague is taking credit for their work. The initial reaction is one of raw anger and a desire for immediate confrontation. But in that heated moment, they pause and invoke their inner sage, perhaps Marcus Aurelius. They consider how the emperor managed the constant betrayals and political intrigues of his court. He would likely advise focusing on what is just and within his control, not on the other person's poor character. This mental shift allows the professional to address the issue with calm, factual clarity, presenting evidence without personal accusation, and thereby preserving both their integrity and their professional standing. The action is their own, but it is guided by a higher standard. So who is the sage in your own life? It could be a historical figure like Abraham Lincoln for his empathy and resilience, a contemporary leader known for their unwavering ethics, or even a fictional character who embodies the principles you aspire to. Identify one person whose character you genuinely admire. What single quality of theirs stands out the most? Is it their courage, their compassion, or their unshakable fairness? Carry that specific quality with you today as a quiet compass, and notice how it subtly influences your next decision when a challenge arises. For a Stoic, an obstacle is not a wall, it is a training ground. This mindset shift is the core of a powerful practice known as inversion, the art of flipping a problem on its head to reveal its hidden value. Every hindrance you encounter presents a unique chance to exercise a specific virtue you wish to cultivate. The frustration of a delay becomes your teacher in patience. A harsh critique becomes the whetstone for your humility and resilience. A lack of resources ignites your creativity. This is not positive thinking, it is strategic thinking, turning every apparent setback into fuel for your growth. Marcus Aurelius captured this transformative idea with stunning clarity when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He understood that the obstacle itself is not the enemy, it is the very path you are meant to walk. It is the curriculum for your development, custom designed by reality to strengthen a part of you that is currently weak. Consider the modern entrepreneur who faces repeated rejection from investors. The initial disappointment is real, but a practitioner of inversion does not stop there. They see this obstacle as an opportunity to exercise the twin virtues of perseverance and excellence. Each no becomes a data point, highlighting a flaw in their business plan or a weakness in their presentation. The rejection is not a verdict on their dream, it is a rigorous free coaching session from the market. They use it to refine their pitch, to build a more robust product, and to deepen their own conviction. The obstacle of rejection becomes the very force that forges a more resilient and compelling venture. Your own life is filled with similar raw material. That difficult colleague is not just a source of stress, they are your live-in trainer for the virtue of understanding and maintaining your own composure. A tight budget is not merely a restriction, it is a masterclass in resourcefulness and distinguishing wants from true needs. The resistance you feel is a direct indicator of where your growth lies. So look at one current obstacle in your own path. What single virtue is it inviting you to practice right now? Is it patience, courage, or perhaps adaptability? Name it. By reframing the blockade as a training ground, you cease to be its victim and become its student, actively using the friction to polish your character into something far stronger and more brilliant. One of the most practical Stoic habits is a conversation with yourself on paper. This nightly ritual of reflection and writing, known as Stoic Journaling, transforms the abstract principles of the philosophy into lived experience. It is a structured pause at the day's end, a quiet space to review your actions, assess your alignment with your values, and consciously plan for a better tomorrow. Far more than a simple diary of events, this practice is a rigorous tool for self-examination. It is where you hold yourself accountable, reinforcing the day's lessons and identifying where your inner citadel may need fortification. The entire text we know as Marcus Aurelius' Meditations was never intended for publication. It was his personal journal, a raw dialogue with himself where he rehearsed Stoic teachings, admonished his own shortcomings, and strengthened his resolve. In our modern context, this is the original framework for personal development, a system for intentional growth that predates any self-help book by nearly 2,000 years. A simple and powerful framework for your own entry requires answering just 3 questions. First, what did I do well today? This is not about ego, but about acknowledging moments where you successfully applied a Stoic principle, perhaps when you paused before reacting in anger or accepted a setback with grace. Second, where did I fail? Examine a moment you fell short with gentle honesty, not self-condemnation. Did you waste energy on something outside your control? Did you assent to a fearful impression without questioning it? Third, and most importantly, what can I improve tomorrow? Based on your reflection, set one small, actionable intention. It could be as simple as tomorrow, I will practice the discipline of assent the first time I feel rushed, or I will look for one opportunity to practice apathy. This turns reflection into forward momentum. Tonight, before you sleep, take just 5 minutes with a notebook. Ask yourself those 3 questions. This single conversation on paper can be the thread that weaves your Stoic insights into the very fabric of your character. True Stoic strength isn't solitary. It's expressed in how we treat other people. The unshakable inner citadel you build is not meant to be a fortress for one, but a foundation for benevolent action in the world. The Stoics saw our rational nature as intrinsically social, arguing that the same logic which guides us to truth also guides us toward cooperation and mutual aid. To be virtuous, therefore, is to be just, fair, and actively helpful. Your strength is measured not by what you endure alone, but by the support you provide to others. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively on this duty, reminding himself that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To act against one another is unnatural and a form of violence to the whole. This perspective stands in stark contrast to a modern culture that often prizes hyper-individualism and personal success above all else. The Stoic path corrects this, showing that our deepest resilience is actually forged in connection. It takes a different kind of courage to listen patiently when you would rather interrupt, or to offer your time when you feel you have none to spare. Consider a team leader who notices a member is consistently behind and struggling. The easy, self-focused reaction might be frustration or a simple directive to work faster. But the Stoic, anchored in their social duty, sees a fellow human in need of support. They sit down with the person not to criticize but to understand the obstacles. They offer guidance, redistribute a small part of the workload, and express genuine confidence in their colleagues' ability. This act of fairness and kindness strengthens the entire team and reinforces the leader's own character. It is a practical application of strength in service, Or think of the person who, despite a demanding schedule, commits one evening a week to volunteering at a local food bank. This is not just charity, it is a lived expression of the Stoic belief in our shared humanity. It is a conscious choice to contribute to the common good, reinforcing the understanding that our own well-being is tied to the health of our community. These actions, large and small, are the exercises that build moral muscle. So where can you plant this seed of social strength today? In the next 24 hours, what one small act of service or deliberate fairness can you perform? It might be as simple as letting a car merge into your lane with a wave, or actively listening to a family member without glancing at your phone. Your inner fortress finds its highest purpose when its gates are open, allowing your strength to flow outward into the world. Stoic calm is not about being emotionless, it is about being free from harmful, irrational emotions. This state of unshaken judgment is what the ancients called Apathyia, a tranquility that comes from mastering your inner world rather than silencing it. You still feel the initial sting of a rude comment or the flash of heat when you are cut off in traffic. These immediate, involuntary reactions are what the Stoics called proto-passions, the first stirrings of feeling that are natural to being human. Apathy is not about blocking these sensations, but about preventing them from escalating into the full-blown, destructive passions of rage, consuming envy, or paralyzing fear that can hijack your reason and lead you astray. Seneca explored this distinction with great care in his work on anger. He explained that the initial shock, that quick pang of feeling, is often beyond our direct control. It is what happens next that defines our character. The true failure, he wrote, is not in feeling the first bite of anger, but in embracing it, giving it your assent, and letting it grow into a sustained and destructive rage that clouds all judgment. Think of it as the difference between noticing a cloud in the sky and deciding to be swept up into the heart of a storm. One is an observation, the other is a choice. Modern life is a minefield of emotional triggers designed to provoke these very passions. A politically charged social media post can ignite outrage in an instant. A colleague's promotion can spark a flicker of envy that, if indulged, turns into a bitter resentment that poisons your own work. Apathy is the mental discipline that inserts a pause between the trigger and the storm. Imagine someone receiving a harsh, unfair critique on a project they have poured their heart into. The proto-passion, the initial flush of anger and hurt, is immediate and visceral. Their heart pounds, their face flushes. This is natural, but a person practicing apatheia does not lash out or spiral into self-doubt. They notice the physiological reaction without becoming its prisoner. They turn to their reason. They ask, is this feedback entirely without merit? Is my anger serving my goal of improving this project? By refusing to assent to the destructive passion, they drain the situation of its toxic power. They can then respond with clarity, perhaps addressing the valid points while calmly dismissing the unfair personal attacks. Their tranquility remains intact because their judgment was not overthrown. Can you recall a recent time when a powerful feeling like anger or fear led you to say or do something you later regretted? That was a passion in the Stoic sense, a wave that carried you away. Now consider how apatheia might have changed that moment, not by making you cold, but by giving you the space to choose a response aligned with your deepest values, leaving you with no regret, only the quiet strength of self-command. What if the key to contentment was not getting what you want, but wanting what is right? This is the profound shift at the heart of the Stoic discipline of desire. It is the practice of retraining your deepest wants to align only with what is truly good, which the Stoics defined as acting with virtue and accepting reality as it is. This is not about suppressing ambition, but about redirecting it toward the only goals that can never be taken from you, your own character and your reasoned choices. We exhaust ourselves chasing external validations, promotions, social likes, and possessions, mistaking them for the source of happiness. The Stoics saw this as the root of most of our anxiety and disappointment. Epictetus laid out the stakes with stark clarity, warning that freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by destroying it. He meant the desire for things outside our moral purpose. When you crave the promotion itself, you hand your peace of mind over to your boss's decision. But when you desire only to perform your duties with excellence and integrity, you remain the sole author of your fulfillment. The promotion becomes a preferred outcome, but not a necessity for your happiness. This discipline is a direct challenge to our modern culture of consumerism and constant comparison. Social media feeds are engineered to create a gap between what we have and what we desire, a gap that we are told can only be filled by the next purchase, the next vacation, the next milestone. The Stoic asks a different question. What if I closed that gap by changing what I want, rather than by feverishly acquiring more? Consider someone who deeply wants to buy a larger, more impressive house, primarily to feel successful and earn the admiration of their peers. This desire for an external good, for status, is a fragile foundation for contentment. It ties their self-worth to a possession and the fickle opinions of others. Now imagine that person applying the discipline of desire. They shift their focus. Their primary want is no longer the house itself, but to live with financial wisdom and gratitude for their current shelter. They may still work toward the larger home, but it is now a simple preference. If it happens, good. If it does not, their core sense of accomplishment remains untouched, because it was rooted in their virtuous management of resources and their appreciative heart. The burning need is gone, replaced by a calm intention. So look at one specific desire you are holding onto right now. It might be for a particular relationship to work out, for a project to be universally praised, or for a certain number on the scale. Now gently interrogate it. Is this desire aligned with my own virtuous action, or is it an attachment to an external result I cannot fully control? The answer to that question reveals whether the desire is building your inner citadel or laying siege to it. Stoics saw themselves as a small part of a vast, intelligent cosmos. This worldview, known as Sympatheia, pictures the entire universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a single, breathing, rational living being. Every star, every stone, and every human soul is a distinct part of this greater body, all woven together by an unbreakable web of cause and effect. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this profound connection, reminding himself that all things are intertwined with one another and the bond is sacred. He wrote that nothing is truly alien to us, for all things are united by a common origin and purpose. To feel isolated or at odds with the world, then, is to misunderstand our fundamental nature. We are not lonely islands adrift in a chaotic sea. We are individual expressions of a coherent, beautiful whole. This ancient insight speaks directly to our modern sense of alienation, the feeling of being disconnected in a crowded digital world, or the anxiety that our individual actions are meaningless. Sympatheia offers a powerful antidote. It reassures us that we belong to something immense and orderly. This perspective also reshapes our relationship with the natural world. When you see the planet not as a resource to be exploited, but as the very body of which you are a part, environmental care becomes a form of self-care. Polluting a river is like poisoning your own bloodstream. Protecting a forest is like tending to your own lungs. This is not a political stance, but a philosophical recognition of a fundamental truth. On a human scale, this view transforms how we approach conflict. When you are locked in a disagreement with a colleague or a family member, it is easy to see them as an opponent, a separate will intent on frustrating your own. But Sympatheia asks you to shift your gaze, see them as another unique, if flawed, part of the same universal whole. You are both expressions of the same rational principle, momentarily out of sync. This does not mean you must agree with them, but it invites you to engage with understanding rather than animosity. Your goal shifts from defeating the other part to helping the whole body function in greater harmony. Can you feel the truth of this connection in your own life? For the next minute, put aside all other thoughts. Look at your own hands. Consider the air filling your lungs, a gift from the distant trees. Feel the floor beneath your feet, made from the ancient materials of the earth itself. In this quiet moment, the illusion of separation dissolves, and you touch the quiet strength of knowing you are forever and always home. For the modern Stoic, the day does not end with closing their eyes, but with opening their journal. This nightly ritual is a conversation with the self, a deliberate and peaceful closure that transforms scattered experiences into coherent lessons. It is an anchor in the rushing river of daily life, a moment to drop the weight of the day before seeking rest. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a devoted practitioner of this evening review. He described his own habit of examining his entire day, going back over what he had done and said, hiding nothing from himself and passing nothing by. His purpose was not to punish himself for his missteps, but to see them clearly, to become a wiser person overnight. He questioned his own actions with a gentle but firm honesty, asking where he had been a slave to his desires rather than a master of his principles. This practice directly counters the anxious mind that replays the day's events in a chaotic loop as you lie in bed. By giving your thoughts a structured outlet on the page, you drain them of their power to haunt the silence. You are not bottling up the stress, you are processing it with reason, which in turn prepares your mind and body for truly restorative sleep. The process itself is beautifully simple and requires only a few minutes. Start by asking, what did I do today? Not just the tasks, but your reactions and interactions. Recall the moment you felt impatient in line, or the kind word you offered to a colleague. Then move to the second question, what could I have done better? This is not an invitation for self-criticism, but for clear-eyed learning. Perhaps you could have paused before sending that reactive email, or listened more intently when your child was speaking. Finally, and most importantly, ask yourself, did I live according to my principles today? This final question ties your entire day to your core values, measuring your actions against the person you aspire to be. The goal is to close the journal with a sense of clarity, not guilt. You acknowledge a mistake not as a failure, but as a single day to point in your long-term growth. Tonight, before you sleep, take just 5 minutes with a notebook. Try this 3-step review. Do not judge your day, simply learn from it. Let this act of peaceful reflection be the quiet bridge that carries you from a day of action into a night of profound and deserved peace. Courage for a Stoic isn't fearlessness, it's doing what is right despite the fear. This virtue is not a blind charge into danger, but a form of practical wisdom. It is the ability to correctly discern what is truly worth fearing, which is acting against your own character, from what is not, which includes nearly every external circumstance you might face. The Stoic teacher Epictetus drew this crucial distinction when he advised that we should be courageous in matters that depend on us, and cautious or reserved in matters that do not. This means your courage is most powerfully expressed in your own choices and judgments, not in trying to control uncontrollable outcomes. The flutter in your stomach before a presentation, the dread of an uncertain financial future, the ache of potential social rejection, these are all sensations. Stoic courage does not ask you to eliminate them. It asks you to act in accordance with your values while carrying them. Consider a team member who strongly disagrees with a popular plan being discussed in a meeting. The fear of being ridiculed or ostracized is a very real physical feeling. Their heart may race, their palms may sweat. The absence of this fear is not the goal. The goal is to act with integrity in its presence. Drawing on Stoic courage, they take a breath and voice their reasoned concerns, not to be contrarian, but because they believe it is right for the project. They accept the internal discomfort as the price of speaking their truth. The outcome, whether their idea is accepted or rejected, is secondary to the courageous act itself. Their strength was not in feeling brave, but in choosing to be brave while feeling afraid. What is one fear that currently holds you back from an action you know is right? Is it the fear of a difficult conversation or the anxiety of starting a new venture? Identify it clearly. Now, set the emotion itself aside for a moment and ask a different question. If you were to act with courage in this situation, what single, reasoned step would you take? That clear, specific action, taken despite the fear, is the very essence of Stoic strength. In a world that prizes constant communication, Stoics find power in deliberate silence. This is not merely the absence of noise, but an active and disciplined practice of cultivating inner quiet. It is a chosen space where the frantic chatter of the outside world is intentionally held at bay, creating room for genuine self-reflection and guarding against the thoughtless speech that so often escalates conflict. For the Stoics, this retreat into silence was a way to observe the procession of their own thoughts, to conserve the energy typically spent on trivial talk, and to prevent the spread of gossip or the utterance of words that could not be taken back. Seneca wrote powerfully about this need for quiet and solitude, explaining that we must give our soul the space and privacy to gather its strength. He believed that just as constant, rich soil becomes exhausted, so too does the mind without periods of rest from endless stimulation. Our modern reality is a constant siege of notifications, opinions, and demands for our attention, creating a profound need for this mental space. Without it, our reactions become shallow and automatic, our words less considered, and our inner peace constantly under assault. A simple and profound way to practice this is to schedule a daily silent walk. Leave your phone and headphones behind. For those 20 minutes, do not seek to fill the space with podcasts or music. Simply walk and observe the world around you, and more importantly, observe the thoughts that arise within you. Do not judge them or follow them down rabbit holes, just note their presence and let them pass. Another powerful application is to institute a personal rule of pausing for a full minute of silence before you respond in a heated discussion. In that minute, you are not preparing your rebuttal. You are simply allowing the initial heat of the emotion to cool, creating the space for a reasoned response to emerge from the quiet. This single pause can prevent a world of regret. Can you schedule just 5 minutes of true, uninterrupted silence into your day-to-day? Find a quiet corner, set a timer, and simply sit. Observe the flow of your thoughts without getting swept away by them. In that quiet, you may just discover a source of strength you never knew you had. Before the world makes its demands, the modern Stoic prepares their mind. This morning ritual is far more than a quiet moment with a cup of coffee. It is a deliberate act of mental fortification. You are not waiting passively for the day's events to happen to you. You are actively mapping your inner response to them in advance. The goal is to replace reactivity with purpose, to ensure that your actions are guided by your chosen virtues long before the first challenge even appears. Marcus Aurelius began his own days with this exact practice, writing notes to himself that would later become his meditations. He would remind himself of what to expect, saying, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This was not a cynical forecast, but a strategic one. By anticipating the difficult behaviors of others, he was immunizing himself against surprise and irritation. He was pre-committing to meet their flaws not with matching anger, but with his own unwavering justice and kindness. This mental rehearsal transforms your entire approach to the day. Instead of being swept away by the first wave of frustration, you have already anchored yourself to a deeper intention. You have visualized the difficult conversation, the tedious task, or the unexpected delay, and you have decided how you will wield your power within it. Your focus shifts from what might be done to you to what you will choose to do. Consider a person who knows they have a tough negotiation ahead. The night before, their mind might swirl with anxiety about the other party's aggressive tactics. But in their morning intentionality practice, they sit for just 2 minutes and visualize the meeting room. They see themselves listening patiently to harsh demands without becoming defensive. They feel their own calm breath as they state their position clearly and fairly, their commitment to a just outcome steadying them against any provocation. They are not trying to control the other person, only their own conduct. They walk into that room not as a bundle of nerves, but as a calm, prepared agent of their own principles. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone or start your routine, try this. Give yourself just 2 minutes of quiet. Bring to mind one specific challenge you anticipate facing. It could be a demanding workload, a conversation you have been avoiding, or simply the grind of your commute. Now, visualize yourself moving through that situation not on autopilot, but with conscious intent. How will you practice patience? Where will you find an opportunity for courage or kindness? This small investment plants the seed for a day lived on your own terms, a day where your inner citadel stands firm from the very first light. An insult is like a gift. You only own it if you accept it. This Stoic perspective transforms a moment of personal offense into an exercise in profound personal freedom. The harsh words themselves are just sounds or letters, data points that carry no inherent power to diminish your character. Your true self, your moral purpose, remains untouched until you decide to internalize the attack and make it your own. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful strategy for this, writing that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who performed the injury. When someone hurls an insult, they are often projecting their own frustration, insecurity, or pain. To respond with anger is to accept their poisoned gift and to become like them, disturbed and irrational. To respond with calm indifference is to demonstrate a strength they cannot touch. Consider the modern equivalent of online trolling. Someone posts a cruel, anonymous comment on your social media page. The initial sting is real, a flash of heat and the immediate impulse to fire back a witty retort or a defensive paragraph. But the Stoic pauses. They recognize the comment for what it is, an external event, an opinion from a stranger that holds no weight over their self-worth, which is built on their own actions and integrity. By choosing not to engage, by refusing to accept the gift of poison, they rob the insult of all its power. The comment remains on the screen, but it becomes a monument to the commenter's character, not theirs. This same principle applies in workplace dynamics. A colleague makes a snide remark about your performance in a meeting. The old you might have seethed inwardly for hours or tried to retaliate later. The Stoic you sees the remark as a reflection of the colleague's own professional insecurities. Your worth is not determined by their words, but by the quality of your work and your ethical conduct. You can acknowledge the comment if necessary with a simple, unshaken response, or you can let it pass by like a leaf on a river without allowing it to disrupt your inner peace. Can you recall a past insult that once felt like a deep wound? Look at it again now through this Stoic lens. See the words for what they were, mere vibrations in the air or pixels on a screen. Your character, then and now, was always separate from that noise. The only power it ever held was the power you gave it by accepting it as truth. In an age of excess, the Stoic practice of moderation is a radical act of self-command. We are surrounded by invitations to overindulge, from endless streaming content to supersized meals and the constant lure of online shopping. Temperance is the Stoic virtue that stands against this tide, defined not as harsh deprivation, but as the rational management of your desires and aversions. It is the application of reason to your appetites for food, drink, pleasure, and consumption, ensuring they serve your life rather than dominate it. This is about finding the wise middle path between excess and deficiency, where your choices are guided by what is beneficial, not merely by what is available. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus placed immense importance on this, arguing that moderation in diet and lifestyle was fundamental to philosophy itself. He taught that food should be eaten to satisfy hunger, not for pleasure, and that we should choose what is easy to obtain over what is extravagant. His point was not that pleasure is evil, but that when pleasure becomes the goal, it corrupts our judgment and weakens our self-control. This disciplined approach directly supports your health, your finances, and your mental clarity. When you are not constantly battling internal cravings or recovering from overindulgence, you conserve a tremendous amount of willpower and focus for what truly matters. Consider the simple act of someone at a dinner party consciously choosing a moderate portion of a rich dessert, savoring each bite fully, and then gracefully declining a second serving. This is not a moment of suffering, but one of quiet empowerment. They are enjoying the pleasure without being enslaved by it. Their action is a lived declaration that their happiness is not dependent on consuming the entire cake. Or picture someone who, after one glass of wine, notices the inner pull for another but decides to switch to water. They are not rejecting fun, they are prioritizing their clarity of mind and well-being for the next day. In the digital realm, temperance might look like setting a firm 30-minute timer for social media scrolling. When the alarm sounds, you close the app without negotiation, reclaiming your time and attention for more meaningful pursuits. Each of these small acts fortifies your inner citadel, proving that you are the master of your impulses. Where in your own life do you notice a pattern of excess? Is it in your spending, your screen time, or perhaps your portion sizes? Identify that one area. Now, gently ask yourself, what would a temperate approach look like in practice tomorrow? Not a rigid denial, but a conscious, reasoned choice that places you back in the driver's seat of your own life. The secret lives of modern Stoics reveal a profound truth, that strength is not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of response. We have journeyed from the inner citadel to the cosmic view, from loving fate to remembering mortality, and a single thread connects them all. This ancient philosophy does not ask you to become less human, but more fully so, by channeling your innate humanity through the clarifying lens of reason and virtue. The secret is not a grand, once-in-a-lifetime transformation. It is in the daily, often invisible, application of these principles, the quiet pause before you speak, the conscious reframing of an obstacle, the nightly conversation with your journal. It is a resilient, purposeful, and peaceful life built one deliberate choice at a time. The freedom this brings was perfectly captured by Epictetus, who said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." This self-mastery is the ultimate strength, the unshakable core that allows you to navigate the modern world not as a victim of circumstance, but as the author of your character. It is the same strength accessible to the person on the bus, the colleague in the meeting, and to you right now. So we leave you with one final question to carry into your days. Which of these practices will you bring into your own secret life this week? Will it be the discipline of assent or a moment of voluntary discomfort? We would love to hear about your journey. Share your experiences and your own discoveries in the comments below. And if you are ready to live more wisely, subscribe for more content to guide your